I always figured weddings were about love, until the day I realized they could also expose everything love had buried. It was Vanessa's sister's wedding, set against a sun-drenched vineyard in Sonoma. Everything gleamed, the chandeliers, the champagne flutes, the people pretending everything was perfect. I stood there in a stiff, rented suit, holding our 6-month-old daughter, Ava, while Vanessa floated from guest to guest like she owned the sky. I hadn't wanted to come. Ava was teething. I hadn't slept in 3 nights. But Vanessa insisted, snapping, "Don't ruin this for my family. Be useful." So I stood there, bouncing Ava gently, swaying back and forth like a decorative tree someone had placed near the gift table. During the ceremony, as we took our seats near the front, I tried to reach for Vanessa's hand, just a small gesture, something. She slapped it away under the table and hissed through her teeth, "Don't embarrass me. You're just the baby holder today." My chest tightened, but I smiled through it. No one noticed. That's the thing about being the quiet one. People assume you're fine, but when the mic was unexpectedly passed to me during the reception, something in me cracked open. I stood up, heart hammering, and began to speak. "Weddings are about remembering love," I said, my voice calm, "but sometimes they remind you when love disappeared." Vanessa stiffened beside me. The room fell quiet. For the first time in years, all eyes were on me, not because I was polished or impressive, but because I was telling the truth. Not all of it, not yet, but enough to feel the room shift, enough to let her know I wasn't invisible anymore. Not today, and not much longer. Back home, the silence was the loudest thing in our house. Not the kind that comes after a long day. No, this was surgical, deliberate. Vanessa filled the rooms with her presence, but none of it ever reached me. We'd once laughed over burnt pancakes in the kitchen and stayed up late planning baby names under cheap string lights. Now the lights were still there, but the laughter was gone, replaced by clipped instructions and long sighs. I stayed home with Ava full-time. It made financial sense, Vanessa said. Her job paid well, and mine had been just freelance gigs. But what she really meant was I made her look good when I stayed behind. I was the prop she could point to in conversation, proof of how modern and balanced our family was. Except I was drowning. Ava's cries echoed off the walls while Vanessa slept in, or I cooked, I cleaned, I changed every diaper, scheduled every doctor's visit. When I asked her once if she could do bath time because I was sick, she laughed. "You're the one who wanted to play stay-at-home dad. Handle it." Conversations became transactions. We're out of wipes. The trash is full. Did you transfer the rent? She stopped looking at me. Everyone with a baby feels that way. Don't be dramatic. And just like that, I stopped asking. I stopped reaching. There was no yelling, no obvious cruelty, just this constant dull ache of being erased one skipped eye contact at a time. I'd scroll through photos on my phone from before Ava was born, studying the man who looked confident, happy, real. He felt like someone I used to know, someone I used to be. The only time I felt visible anymore was when Ava reached up for me, gurgling, needing. In those moments, I remembered that I still mattered to someone, but even that felt like a borrowed identity. I wasn't living, I was ghosting through my own life, unheld, unheard, unseen. And Vanessa didn't even notice. Or worse, maybe she did, and liked it that way. It started with a logo. Just a simple email from an old client I hadn't heard from in nearly 2 years. "Hey, Evan, are you still doing design work? I need a quick refresh on my cafe's branding." I stared at the message like it was written in another language. My first instinct was to ignore it. Vanessa had always told me freelancing was a waste of time, but something in me itched, stirred. That night, after Ava finally drifted off, I dusted off my old laptop, opened the design software I used to know like my own hands, and got to work. It felt clunky at first, like trying to dance in shoes that didn't fit, but Once I got moving, the rhythm came back. The deadline was tight, the pay was laughable, $100, 0 cents flat, but when I hit send on the final files and saw the client's thank you reply, I smiled without thinking. It wasn't about the money, it was about remembering I could still do something that wasn't diapers or dishes or silence. I cashed the payment to a separate PayPal account. Then another small project came, and another. I worked only at night. Quiet hours, stolen hours. I didn't tell Vanessa. I didn't want her scorn or her questions. This was mine. I started saving receipts in a hollowed out copy of a novel she'd never read. Hid my notes under Ava's changing table. I didn't think of it as rebellion yet, just survival. A flicker of identity I couldn't let die. When Ava smiled at me one morning, I felt it deep in my chest. Not just the joy of fatherhood, but the first real breath of myself returning. I was still here, buried maybe, but not gone. Not yet. Lucas's message came in like sunlight through a boarded window. Saw your name on a site footer, you still designing? Just a short DM on social media, but it stopped me cold. Lucas and I had been inseparable in college. Late night brainstorming sessions, cheap takeout, laughing over client disasters and shared internships. But life had pulled us in different directions, and we hadn't spoken in years. I stared at the message, hesitant. Then I typed back, mostly nights. Got a baby now. Things are different. He replied almost instantly. Let's catch up. I'm in town next week. We met at a quiet cafe on the edge of downtown. I hadn't worn real jeans in months, but I forced myself out of the sweatpants uniform. Lucas looked the same. Sharp eyes, confident grin, sleeves rolled up like always. You look tired, he said gently after our hug. I laughed. That's fatherhood. But he didn't buy the deflection. As we talked about old projects and what we were working on now, I kept things vague. He leaned in. You doing okay? There was no judgment in his voice, just concern. I paused. I'm trying to get back to me. He nodded slowly. Good. You always had something. If you ever want freelance work, real clients, real pay, my agency needs talent, I can float your name. That night I didn't sleep, not out of fear, but because for the first time in ages, someone remembered who I used to be and believed I was still worth something, maybe even more than I believed it myself. Vanessa noticed before she ever said a word. It was subtle at first, a longer glance at my laptop, questions that didn't feel casual. What are you working on? She asked one night, eyes too calm. I shrugged. Just a parenting forum. She didn't push, but a week later I found one of my printed invoices, one I had hidden inside an old shoebox, left face up on the kitchen counter. No note, just exposure. I knew then she wasn't guessing. She was watching. The next morning, my phone battery drained faster than usual. I checked the app drawer. A strange icon called Health Sync sat near the bottom. I hadn't downloaded it. My chest tightened. I looked deeper. It had permissions for GPS, microphone, and messages. I deleted it instantly, but the message was clear. She'd planted spyware, not just on the device, but on me. From that day, she started a quiet campaign of sabotage. She called my mother under the guise of concern, painting me as overwhelmed, unstable, forgetful. He's not coping well, she whispered. I'm scared he's burning out to her friends. I was checked out, too absorbed in the baby, too sensitive, too emotional. I wasn't just losing privacy, I was losing credibility. If I ever left, she was building a paper trail, a narrative, a trap. I checked my hiding spots. The holobook, empty. The backup folder on the flash drive, missing. She'd found my escape routes and erased them. But I didn't panic. I adapted. I scanned every document again, uploaded them to a new cloud account under a fake name. I stored hard copies. I bought a burner phone with cash. I stopped keeping anything important in one place. I didn't confront her. I couldn't. Not yet. Her power came from control, from knowing more. So I smiled when she came home, kissed her cheek, cleaned the kitchen, pretended I was still too tired to think. But inside, I was sharper than I'd ever been. If she wanted war, she should have picked someone who didn't know how to disappear in plain sight. There was no grand announcement, no slam doors, just a slow, calculated reclaiming of the man I used to be. Every night, once Ava was asleep, I powered on the old laptop and worked on freelance projects with my headphones in. I sipped instant coffee like it was fuel for revolution. Vanessa would sometimes glance into the living room, suspicious, but I kept my face neutral, my posture relaxed, just reading. She didn't press. Yet. I created a new email, registered under a fake name, and routed all payments to an online wallet she didn't know existed. I signed up for daycare assistance programs during her long shifts at work, using the library's public Wi-Fi. I started visiting low-income apartments under the guise of future planning. The woman at the front desk smiled when I asked about one-bedroom units. "Looking for a fresh start?" she asked. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. At home, I kept everything perfectly in place. Laundry folded, meals cooked, baby fed. I gave Vanessa no reason to interrogate. But I also stopped trying to earn her warmth. I stopped asking for her attention, stopped flinching when she ignored me at dinner or scrolled through her phone during Ava's milestones. Every slight used to gut me. Now they only confirmed I was doing the right thing. One night, as I was cleaning bottles, she leaned against the counter. "You've been different lately," she said, studying me. "More distant." I smiled politely. "Just tired." She narrowed her eyes. "Well, make sure you're not hiding anything." I dried my hands calmly. "Why would I?" She didn't answer, just walked away. I stood there for a while, listening to the baby monitor, humming faintly. This was my life now. Every password was changed, every document backed up twice. I bought a second diaper bag, identical to the first, and packed it with emergency supplies, formula, cash, Ava's birth certificate. I kept it in the trunk beneath a blanket and a set of jumper cables. I was no longer waiting for her to rescue me. I wasn't hoping she'd change. I was preparing, because the quiet rebellion had already begun, and I wasn't stopping until Ava and I were free. The night it happened, the house was too quiet. Vanessa came home with a bottle of wine and a bouquet of peonies, my favorite, though she hadn't bought me flowers in years. She lit a candle, poured 2 glasses, and sat across from me on the couch with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I've been thinking," she said, swirling her wine. "Maybe we need a reset, a fresh start, get back to being a team." I nodded slowly, careful not to betray the pounding in my chest. I knew what this was. Not reconciliation, but surveillance wrapped in sentiment. Later, after she went to bed, I checked my phone. A new app, System Boost, had appeared, buried in the permissions. It had access to my GPS, microphone, even my clipboard. My emergency folder in the diaper bag, gone again. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I adapted. I pulled out the real folder, copies of my freelance invoices, Ava's birth certificate, and daycare forms, triple-bagged in plastic and hidden beneath the bathroom sink's trash liner. I set the burner phone to silent, preloaded with directions to the shelter Nina had confirmed would be ready. I packed Ava's overnight bag, formula, wipes, extra clothes, her favorite stuffed giraffe. I waited. At 3:47 a.m. I crept into the nursery. Ava stirred slightly as I picked her up, her tiny hands curling against my chest. I kissed her forehead and wrapped her in a soft blanket. The house creaked under my feet. Every step felt like a gunshot. Outside, the air was sharp and cold. I unlocked the car as quietly as I could, placed Ava in her seat, and climbed in behind the wheel. My hands shook as I started the engine. That's when the porch light flicked on. Vanessa stood in the doorway, barefoot, arms crossed, just watching. We stared at each other for a beat too long. Then she stepped forward. I didn't wait. My foot hit the gas. I didn't look back again. I drove through sleeping streets, every red light a test of will, every shadow a question. Was she following? Would she come after us? But at 4:26, IMTAXIIII was there waiting, wrapped in a cardigan, her expression soft and steady. "You made it," she said. I nodded, too choked to speak. She led me inside, showed me our room, simple, clean, safe. That night, for the first time in years, I slept without fear. And Ava, curled into my chest, didn't stir once. Freedom came with a price. Within days of leaving, Vanessa launched her counterattack, swift, calculated, and venomous. She called my mother, voice heavy with concern, and spun a story about me having a mental breakdown, taking Ava without permission, and vanishing in the night. To some of our mutual friends, she claimed I was unstable and dangerous. "I'm worried about him," she whispered, carefully planting seeds of doubt. But I had expected this. Every lie she told, I met with evidence. I forwarded daycare applications, pay stubs, and screenshots to my lawyer, Raya, who wasted no time filing for emergency custody protection. "She's not just lying," Raya said, flipping through our documentation. "She's building a false narrative to destroy your credibility. But she's sloppy." Meanwhile, Lucas's firm offered me part-time contract work. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to move Ava and me into a small extended stay rental near the shelter. I hung her tiny clothes in a closet that smelled like old carpet, but it was ours. I applied for full custody and attended every court-mandated mediation session, calm and composed. Vanessa tried to rattle me, showing up in designer dresses, smiling too wide, but the more she performed, the more hunger her intentions became. She was still playing control. I was playing the truth, and for once, I wasn't losing. Lucas's wedding wasn't lavish, but it was warm, backyard lights strung from trees, folding chairs filled with real friends, and vows that felt like promises, not performances. I hadn't expected to be asked to speak, but when Lucas handed me the mic, I didn't hesitate. My palms didn't sweat, my heart didn't race. I looked out over the small crowd and felt the weight of what had changed. The last time I gave a wedding speech, I was holding my daughter, trying to smile through something I couldn't yet name. I said that weddings are about remembering love. What I didn't say back then, what I didn't have the strength to say, is that sometimes, before you can love someone else, you have to remember yourself. Silence settled gently over the guests, not awkward, but reverent. I continued, "I spent years thinking that shrinking myself would save a relationship. That if I gave enough, was quiet enough, useful enough, love would return. But real love doesn't ask you to disappear. It sees you, even in the mess, even in the quiet." I glanced at Lucas and his new wife, beaming. "So, my only wish for you is this. Never stop seeing each other. Even when life gets loud." At the back of the crowd, I saw Vanessa. She had come, uninvited, arms folded, jaw tight. She said nothing. And for the first time, I didn't care, because her silence no longer had power. It was just noise I no longer needed to absorb. The apartment was small, just one bedroom, creaky floors, and a view of a parking lot, but to me, it felt like a cathedral. I set up Ava's crib by the window and pinned her drawings on the fridge with magnets from gas stations we'd passed on the way here. Every morning, I made coffee while she babbled in her high chair, the scent of freedom stronger than any roast. My work with Lucas's firm grew steadier, and I started picking up more hours. Building court proceedings were still ongoing, but I had Raya by my side, and more importantly, I had truth. Ava laughed more now, deep belly giggles that rolled out without hesitation. Sometimes, when I watched her sleep, I whispered, "We're okay now," because we were. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I wasn't surviving in someone else's shadow. I was here, rebuilding, one honest day at a time, not because it was easy, but because it was finally ours. And in the stillness of that rented space, with nothing perfect except the peace, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning, and we were just getting started. This story is a reminder that abuse doesn't always leave bruises. It can come dressed in politeness, hidden in silence, wrapped in subtle control. Evan's journey shows us that even the strongest love can lose its way when respect and recognition disappear. He didn't escape overnight. He didn't roar his way out. He whispered, planned, adapted, and survived. Sometimes courage looks like packing a diaper bag with documents. Sometimes rebellion is as quiet as clicking send on a job application at 3 a.m. But freedom? That's loud. That's sacred. And it belongs to anyone brave enough to choose themselves, even after years of being told they're too small, too soft, too nothing. Evan didn't just leave a toxic home. He walked into a new one he built with love, intention, and truth. If this story moved you or reminded you of someone who needs to know they're not alone, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. You never know who might be quietly preparing their own escape, waiting for a sign that it's possible. Your voice, your freedom, your peace, they matter, and they are worth fighting for,